So, this video is going to be about two things. Number one, how to deal with playing games on the hardest difficulty. And number two, how to get better at video games altogether. And I believe they're more closely related than you might think. This came to my mind recently after playing The Witcher 3. I finished it on the hardest difficulty, and some people came to me and said, "Oh man, how have you done that? I tried it, but it was so hard I had to put it down, blah 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 blah." And this got me thinking, well, what's stopping you really? I don't think of myself as some sort of gaming badass for completing games on the hardest difficulty. I believe it's more about the approach you take to playing the game than how fast your fingers move or how quick your reactions are or how good you are with mouse accuracy or controller accuracy. I think it's more of a mindset thing than a physical thing. But some games do require that physical precision a little bit more, especially if they have a steep learning curve like Armour or Counter-Strike or even Chivalry here. And of course online games don't really have a difficulty setting, but I think the same principle applies, that using your mind is more important than using your hands. Now, something that I have noticed with games that do have difficulty settings is they always sound a bit more terrifying than they really are. So Dead Space 3 here, for example. All the other game modes sound nice and fancy, hard, less plentiful, enemies are deadlier, and then you get the game mode Impossible. The very name of it, Impossible, sounds terrifying to start with. Resources are very scarce and the enemies will brutalize you. That instantly, I think, puts people off even trying this game mode because they think, "Oh, that sounds terrifying, I don't want to do it." But really, it's not that bad. The Witcher 3, the hardest difficulty, Death March, again makes it sound like a suicide run. You're truly insane and loving it, apparently. So again, might put people off. Alien Isolation. The hard difficulty is described as the recommended by the developers, which suggests that the hardest mode, Nightmare, the ultimate test of survival, is probably even harder than they intended. So it's understandable that some people get deterred from even trying the harder game modes and just go straight to normal or easy or whatever they want to play on. And I can understand not everyone wants to play games on the hardest difficulty or be frustrated by video games after a hard day of work or whatever, but I think you get so much more out of a game if you do. I've also always found that if you play a game on normal for so many hours and then go ahead and try that same game on hard or the hardest difficulty, it always feels so much harder than it really is. And if you start the game, never played it before, play a game on the hardest difficulty first, you then become acclimatized to that difficulty, and when you go back and play the game on normal, it feels so easy and you're like, wow, why did I never play this on hard in the first place? So again, I think it's a mind thing more than a physical thing. And what I find on games on harder difficulties, if you're given less ammo, if you're given less health, it forces you to play better. You have to go for headshots because you don't have enough ammo to just spray and pray like you do on normal mode. You have to be evasive, you have to try and avoid attacks because you simply don't have enough health packs to keep you alive if you get hit, because you're going to die in 2 or 3 hits. On normal mode, maybe you can take 5 or 6, 7 hits. And even if you do take damage, it's fine because you've got 10 med packs, you can just heal yourself right up and carry on to the next enemy. You don't have to think about anything. You don't have to avoid anything. You can just stand in front of enemies and blast them until they're dead. And if they hit you, heal up, move on to the next enemy. No strategy, no thought, no fun, in my opinion. And as you employ all these things in more difficult games, it will make you play more carefully, more slowly, which is not only going to make the game last a little bit longer, but is also going to fulfill you a little bit more when you accomplish something that is pretty tough. And no matter what the challenge is, whatever game it is, everything can be beaten in one way or another. Whether it's through strategy, whether it's through the right preparation with items and such, or whether it's just a pure bit of luck. I remember on Dragon Age Inquisition, there was a boss, the Aspect of the Nightmare or something like that. It was a freaking hard boss on the hardest difficulty. Mainly because I was ill prepared for it, I didn't have the right stuff, and it was a real struggle. And it took me probably 10 or 15 tries to get past it. But eventually, learning his attacks, learning what he does, learning what happens, knowing what I can and can't do, allowed me to develop a strategy to defeat the boss. There were times where I thought, I'm never going to be able to do this, this is pointless, this is ridiculous, it's too hard. But no, eventually, you can overcome it. Another big part of it is being okay with failure. It doesn't matter if you die, you get to retry it. You can do it as many times as you like, try stuff out. Maybe it'll blow up in your face and make you look like a fool, but at least you tried something. A lot of trial and error is involved with these harder game modes. You don't really have to worry about that on normal or easy stuff. So don't be afraid of failure, because without failure, you're never going to learn anything. And that's a good lesson for all aspects of life, not just video games. So you get life lessons in here as well. Now, coming back to everything I just said and trial and error, a great game for this sort of thing is Dark Souls. If you've ever played Dark Souls, you'll know that there is no difficulty setting. It's as hard as it is and you have to deal with it. You either leave it or love it. This game forces you to be careful because it will kick your ass if you're not. You can't just run in and start swinging a sword around like nobody's business and expect to come out alive. A tactic that I developed when I started playing through the Dark Souls games is when I came to a boss, I would not attack it for the first minute or two, I'd just watch it. Just learn its attacks, learn how it moves. Information is the key. I'd be able to find those vulnerabilities, find the weaknesses, find places where I could nip in, do damage and get back out without getting hurt myself. So while this is a tactic that I developed in Dark Souls, it's a tactic that I now use in every game where I have to face some kind of boss. I'll take my time, try to figure them out, and then trial and error some different things that I can do. Maybe I'll mess up, maybe I'll die 7 times, but hey, eventually I will get the bastard. Now, we live in a gaming generation of waypoints and indicators and highlighted objects, map trails, aim assists, all this stuff aimed at making the game very easy and accessible with no real thought required to get through the game. If you get lost, we've got this little indicator for you that will tell you exactly where to go so you don't have to try and figure anything out. This sort of thing is just killing the difficulty of games and just holds people's hand through the game, babies them through it, because we're all obviously too stupid to be able to figure out where to go. Whatever happened to the good old Resident Evil days where you just get thrown in a mansion and you just have to run around and try to figure out what the hell you're supposed to do? And again, I can appreciate not everyone wants to run around for 10 minutes in the same spot trying to figure out what to do. But these are the same people that generally complain that they suck at games when they play the stuff too easy. Now here's an example. Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes. First off, let me say I'm a huge Metal Gear fan, so I'm not hating on Metal Gear at all. I'm just hating on this new feature that they've added in Ground Zeroes. It's basically a get out of jail free card. It's called reflex mode. If you get spotted, time slows down and you get a couple of seconds to just place one nice bullet to save yourself. So you get a second chance every time you get spotted. It's this sort of hand holding that I personally find somewhat insulting, that they really think we're too stupid to be able to get past something without their assistance and without their second chance help. I can literally just charge through this level, not a care in the world, because if I mess up it's fine, reflex mode will save me. And if you've ever played a Metal Gear game, you know that this has just never been the case. If you mess up and you get spotted, you have to deal with the alert, and that's that. But I can appreciate from a business point of view why game developers make their game more broad and accessible to larger audiences in a bid to make more money. And of course the major demographic is probably casual gamers over hardcore gamers, but when you gear a game towards casual gamers, it tends to ruin the game for hardcore players who aren't stupid, who know how games work, who want to be challenged. There just seems to be a worrying trend nowadays of games being simplified to appeal to a larger audience. Look at Elder Scrolls or Battlefield. Anyway, I digress, that was not my point here. What I was going to say is what I like to do before I play a new game is go through the options first and see if there's anything that sounds like it makes the game a little bit too easy. For example, Metal Gear Reflex Mode, you can actually turn it off, thankfully. There's also a bunch of other options which you can turn off. You've got marker displays, enemy presence displays, damage direction displays, all this stuff which you don't really need, and you can experience the game in a much more challenging and fun way, in my opinion, without all that stuff. Anyway, in conclusion, long story short, if you want to get better at games, learn the hard way. Play games on the hardest difficulties. Take the harder routes. Play against people who are better than you. Learn from them. Learn why they kicked your ass. And from there, you can build your skills up. This is just my opinion on the subject. You may agree or disagree. Either way, let me know, slap me a comment, and we can discuss. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the future.